After 8 years of sacrifice helping my wife become a lawyer, she handed me divorce papers the day she passed the bar exam and told me, I don't need you anymore. I have my license. She had no idea I was already 3 moves ahead. Hey Reddit, ever spend years building someone else's dream only to find out you were just the placeholder until they didn't need you anymore? Yeah, that was me. But instead of sticking around and playing the fool, I had other plans. Let's just say when she thought she'd won, she found out quickly she was playing checkers while I was playing chess. When I first met her, she wasn't the monster people expect me to describe now. She was actually decent, supportive in her own way. She wasn't pulling 6 figures or anything, but she did what she could. Cooked when I came home late, picked up groceries sometimes, even slipped me a 20 here and there when money was tight. At the time, it felt like teamwork. I didn't mind carrying the heavier load because she pitched in however she could, and more importantly, she made it clear she had a plan. Law school, bar exam, career, future. And that was the word that hooked me back then, future. We weren't living glamorous lives. My nights were mostly spent working double shifts, overtime hours, and sleeping in between. She was buried in textbooks the size of cinder blocks, highlighting until her hands cramped. We'd eat frozen dinners more nights than I can count, or sometimes she'd throw together spaghetti and call it a win. There wasn't a lot of fun. Vacations? Forget about it. The closest we got was splitting a milkshake at a diner after one of her finals. But here's the thing. I believed in the grind. I believed in putting in work today for something better tomorrow. So when she said, once I pass the bar, everything will be different, I bought into it like it was gospel. I figured all the overtime, the canceled trips, the boring nights, it was an investment in us. And for a while, she made it easy to believe. Don't get me wrong, she wasn't some doting housewife or anything, but she showed enough effort to keep me convinced. She'd rub my shoulders when I came home drained. She'd ask about my day, even if she was half asleep. Little things, but they mattered. I told myself, she's exhausted. I'm exhausted, but we're building something here. That carried me through the first few years. But law school isn't just classes and books. It's stress layered on stress. And somewhere between her last year of classes and the start of bar prep, things started to shift. Subtle at first. Like instead of talking about our future, she started saying my career. I remember one night I came home and mentioned that maybe once she was done, we could finally take that trip we kept putting off. Just a week somewhere, nothing crazy. She didn't even look up from her notes, just said, that's not really a priority for me right now. My career is what matters. It hit weird. My career. Not our life. Not our future. Just hers. But I brushed it off. Told myself it was just the stress talking. Bills that she used to pay on time I'd find sitting unopened on the counter. And when she did cover bills, it wasn't her at all. It was auto-pay pulling straight from my account. She thought she was contributing, but really, I was covering everything whether she touched an envelope or not. Dishes piling up because she said she needed every hour for bar prep. Anytime I asked, she'd hit me with the same line. I need to focus right now. This is the most important test of my life. And maybe she wasn't wrong. Passing the bar isn't a walk in the park. But I started noticing how quickly she dismissed anything that wasn't directly about her. If I had a rough week at work, she'd barely react. If I mentioned saving up for a house someday, she'd wave it off with, we'll talk about that once I'm established. Established. That was her new favorite word. It was like the closer she got to the bar exam, the more she started acting like she was already too good for the life we had. She hadn't even passed yet, hadn't earned a dime as a lawyer, and she was already carrying herself like she was on a different level. I noticed it. Of course I noticed it. But you know what I told myself? I told myself it was just nerves. Just tunnel vision before the finish line. People get snappy when they're under pressure. They say things they don't mean. So I let it slide. Every time she slipped in a little my career or brushed off something that mattered to me, I shoved it into a mental drawer labeled temporary. I figured once the exam was over, the pressure would lift, and she'd snap back to normal. The decent version of her that still cooked spaghetti sometimes and asked about my day. Looking back now, I realized those weren't temporary cracks. They were the real her slipping through. The entitlement, the dismissiveness, the way she started treating me less like a partner and more like background support. It wasn't stress. It was who she'd been hiding behind all those textbooks. But in that moment, in those last months before the bar exam, I wasn't ready to see it. I was too invested, too stubborn. 8 years of sacrifice doesn't exactly make you want to admit you might be wasting your time. So I kept grinding, kept working double shifts, kept carrying the load, kept telling myself the same story. Once she passes, everything will finally be different. Spoiler, I was right. just not in the way I expected. Her law school graduation had been my first taste of pride after years of grinding. That day, I sat in the back of the auditorium, clapping louder than anyone else when they called her name. She walked across the stage in that stupid, oversized gown, holding a diploma that symbolized our sacrifices. Families around me were hugging, taking photos, planning dinner reservations. I stood there in my new shirt, feeling like we'd finally made it. I thought, this is it. This is the payoff. We're finally on the same team again. I couldn't have been more wrong. Fast forward a few months later, the bar exam results came out. That morning, I woke up buzzing like it was Christmas. 8 years of her studying, me working doubles, us living like roommates instead of husband and wife, all of it came down to this. She spent the morning glued to her laptop, refreshing the results page while I tried not to hover. When she finally screamed, I thought it was joy for us. She turned the screen toward me. I passed. Just 2 words. No we did it, just I. Still, I wrapped my arms around her, lifted her off the ground, told her I was proud. Because that's what you do when you believe you're a team. That night, her classmates organized a dinner at a trendy spot downtown. Everyone brought spouses, partners, family. It was supposed to be a celebration, so I put on the same shirt I'd worn to her graduation, figuring I'd look sharp sitting next to my new lawyer wife. The atmosphere in the restaurant was electric. Parents bragging, friends toasting, people clinking glasses. I clapped and cheered along with everyone else, smiling like an idiot, thinking this was our fresh start. When dessert rolled around, she tapped my arm and slid a manila envelope across the table. I thought maybe it was a letter from the state bar, some formality I needed to sign. I opened it casually, expecting something bureaucratic. Divorce papers? My brain stalled. I looked at her, waiting for her to crack a smile, to say it was a prank. She didn't. Her face was calm, cold, like she'd rehearsed this moment. I already signed my part, she said. All you need to do is finish it. I blinked. What? I'm dead serious, she replied. Her voice was low, controlled, like she was giving legal advice. I don't need you anymore. I have my license. I have job offers. I have a future. You were helpful during school, but that chapter is over. Helpful. 8 years of my life reduced to the word helpful, like I was a loan she'd been approved for. Not a husband who sacrificed everything so she could chase her dream. Around us, forks froze midair. Her classmates and their families were suddenly a silent audience. Some looked confused, some looked uncomfortable, but none of them looked surprised. I realized then that she'd probably been dropping hints to them too. The whole I'm outgrowing him narrative. I thumbed through the papers. She'd already divided up what she wanted. The car, the apartment, even furniture she'd never bought. She left me the legal bare minimum, like she was doing me a favor. You've really thought this through, huh? I asked, keeping my voice flat. I'm not stupid. I know what I want. I reached into my jacket pocket, pulled out the pen I always carried for work, and signed the acknowledgement of service. Basically me confirming I'd been served. It wasn't a final settlement, just her draft wish list of what she thought she'd get. Page after page, the scratch of ink was the only sound in the room. Her expression shifted with every stroke. She expected a fight, maybe me begging her not to leave, maybe me making a scene so she could paint me as the problem. Instead, I gave her exactly what she asked for: cooperation. When I was done, I slid the papers back across the table. Congratulations, I said, on passing the bar, and on your divorce. Her mouth dropped open. That's it? You're not even going to... Why would I fight for someone who just called me dead weight? I cut her off. I stood, smoothed out my shirt, and walked out of the restaurant. No yelling, no begging, just gone. Behind me, I could feel the tension snap like a rubber band. People were whispering, her classmates probably piecing together the story. To them, I was the guy who worked myself to the bone so she could chase this dream. And she was the one discarding me the same night she should have been thanking me. That walk out of the restaurant was the cleanest I'd ever felt. She wanted to start her new life? Perfect. She had no idea what kind of weight I'd been carrying for her all those years. And as I turned the corner, disappearing into the night, I wasn't devastated. I wasn't broken. I was already calculating, already planning my exit. Because if she thought she could just cut me out of her life and walk into some shiny lawyer future without consequences, she had no clue who she was dealing with. She thought she'd blindside me at that restaurant with the divorce papers, like I was some clueless husband who never saw the writing on the wall. Truth is, I'd been preparing for that moment long before she slid that manila envelope across the table. Not because I'm psychic, but because I'm not stupid. You don't notice red flags without putting a backup plan in motion. While she was drowning in flashcards and pretending she was the only one suffering, I started moving. Not in a panic way. Quiet, deliberate, piece by piece. First, it was my record collection. She always complained about them taking up too much space anyway. So one Saturday when she was at a study group, I packed them up and hauled them to a storage unit across town. Same with my tools. She never touched them. Didn't even know what half of them were for. They went into the unit too. Along with my grandmother's china set, she rolled her eyes at every holiday. From the outside, the apartment looked the same. Couch still there. TV still there. Shelves still lined with books she never read. But little by little, the only things that actually mattered to me disappeared. By the time she handed me those papers, she was basically standing in a furnished shell. Financially, I was even further ahead. When the red flags started appearing, I'd started funneling money into a separate account she didn't know existed. Meanwhile, she thought our joint account was the whole picture. Cute. The lease? Entirely in my name. Utilities too. She didn't even realize half the bills she thought she was covering were coming from my personal account. She thought she was staking a claim to the apartment in those divorce papers. Joke was on her. Legally, it was never hers to take. So when she smugly pushed that envelope across the table, she wasn't taking anything from me. The car she used to parade? Registered under my name. Payments coming from my account. The apartment? Mine. The assets? Gone months ago. She thought she was being clever. Really, she was signing up for a bare apartment and a pile of debt she couldn't cover on her future lawyer's salary. That's the part that still makes me laugh. She thought she'd upgraded. She thought she was walking into a new life with shiny credentials and no dead weight. Instead, she walked straight into an empty apartment with no power, no internet, and no clue how to function without me. Meanwhile, I was already miles ahead. By the time she probably noticed the lights were off, I was starting fresh in San Francisco. The move wasn't glamorous. I loaded up my truck with the essentials, clothes, the boxes from the storage unit, important documents, a couple personal items, and drove west. Long hours, cheap motels, lots of bad coffee, but every mile felt lighter, like I was peeling off a layer of dead skin I'd been wearing for years. San Francisco wasn't chosen at random. Big city, plenty of opportunities, and no connections to her or anyone in her orbit. She'd never think to look for me there. To her, I was a boring, routine guy who'd probably crawl back to the same job, same apartment, same life. She had no idea I'd already mapped out an exit she couldn't follow. Within a week of arriving, I had an apartment. Nothing fancy, a one-bedroom in a modest building with a view of a parking lot. But it was mine. The first night I turned the key, I stood in the middle of that empty living room and just breathed. No textbooks scattered on the table, no unpaid bills left on the counter, no sighs about how I didn't understand the pressure of law school. Just quiet. Work fell into place quickly, too. I landed a job with a management consulting firm downtown. Solid pay, decent hours, and more importantly, zero baggage. Nobody there cared about my past. To them, I was just a guy with experience and work ethic. That was it. No supportive husband title stapled to my back. And here's the part I really enjoyed. For the first time in nearly a decade, my life was mine. I wasn't budgeting around her tuition. I wasn't scheduling days off around her exam calendar. I wasn't eating frozen dinners while she studied. My evenings were free. I could cook, go to the gym, explore the city, or just sit on my balcony listening to my records without anyone complaining. I didn't text her, didn't call, didn't leave breadcrumbs. To her, I just vanished. And that silence? That was my ace. People like her can't stand being ignored. They thrive on control, on knowing you're still orbiting them. By cutting the cord completely, I guaranteed she'd eventually spiral. And I wouldn't even need to lift a finger. The best part was knowing how her reality was about to hit. She thought she kicked me to the curb, but the truth was I'd already packed up and moved out. She wanted the apartment? She got 4 walls and utility shutoff notices. She wanted the car? Too bad, it was never hers. So while she was fumbling through her first months as a brand new lawyer with a mountain of student debt, I was sitting in San Francisco drinking good coffee, cashing good paychecks, and living in peace. She thought she'd discarded me. In reality, I discarded her first. And that's the part she'll never admit out loud. The fact that I didn't just walk away, I made sure when she looked around at what she'd won, there was nothing left worth keeping. And that's exactly what happened. She strutted into her new life thinking she had it all figured out. Bar card in one hand, divorce papers in the other, probably rehearsing how she'd introduce herself as a successful single lawyer at networking events. But here's the thing about reality. It doesn't care about your ego. Within weeks, her little fantasy started collapsing. First, the money. Passing the bar doesn't magically print $100 bills. Her shiny new job? Junior associate at a mid-sized firm? Translation, glorified intern with a business card. Sure, she could brag about the title, but the paycheck didn't match the hype. She was clocking 70 to 80-hour weeks, getting barked at by senior partners, and bringing home barely more than what I'd been making in my previous job. Meanwhile, her law school debt was waiting like a hungry wolf, 6 figures deep. She used to say, "We'll tackle it together once I'm working." Well, the we was gone, and suddenly she was staring at interest rates that didn't care about her career trajectory. The apartment? She thought she was staking her claim in those divorce papers, but it was never hers. The lease was in my name, the utilities in my name, and by the time she tried to step into her place, it was already stripped of everything valuable and lined with shut-off notices. She couldn't stay. Landlord wouldn't let her. I'd already given notice and terminated the lease a month before. Since it was all in my name, she didn't even realize until it was too late. When she tried to keep the place, the landlord told her she'd have to reapply on her own, and her credit wasn't anywhere near good enough. On top of that, I'd already shut off every utility account under my name. So what she walked back into wasn't her apartment. It was 4 walls with no power, no internet, and no shot at staying. So she ended up moving into a 2-bedroom with a pair of roommates she met through another associate. Imagine the optics. The future big shot lawyer who dumped her husband now splitting rent with 2 people who weren't impressed by her attitude. From what I later heard, they weren't shy about calling her out either. One of them straight up asked her, "So you dumped the guy who paid for everything, and now you can't even cover your share?" Brutal. Her weekends weren't better. She had this fantasy of brunches, networking events, living the city life dream. Instead, she was collapsing on the couch between shifts, inhaling cafeteria food and energy drinks just to stay awake. Freedom wasn't fun when all it meant was paying bills solo and dragging yourself through another week of grunt work. And while she was spiraling, I was thriving. San Francisco fit me like a glove. My management consulting gig was steady and surprisingly chill compared to the grind I'd done before. Good money, normal hours, and for the first time in forever, my brain wasn't constantly calculating how to stretch every dollar between her tuition, rent, and groceries. The contrast between us was almost comical. Me in San Francisco, building a steady, balanced life. Her in some overcrowded apartment, pulling 80-hour weeks and arguing with roommates about utilities. She went from, "I don't need you, I'm starting fresh," to, "Can someone Venmo me for my share of the Wi-Fi bill?" in record time. The kicker? I didn't even need to lift a finger. No revenge plots, no sabotage, just silence. She made her choice, and all I had to do was let her live in it. And I was. I'd stopped being the guy chained to her ambitions and became the guy steering my own life. She was burning herself out trying to prove she was independent. But independence isn't about bragging rights, it's about control. And I had it. Complete, undeniable control over my time, my money, my peace. She wanted me gone. She got it. And in the process, she got a brutal crash course in what it's like when the so-called deadweight stops carrying you. For months, I stayed radio silent. She didn't know if I was across town or across the country. That drove her nuts. The silence was the real punishment. Because people like her don't fear yelling or fighting. They fear being irrelevant. I knew she'd try something eventually. I just didn't know when. The first time I saw her name pop up on my phone, I laughed. I was on my lunch break, sitting outside a cafe in San Francisco, sipping coffee and scrolling headlines. The name flashed on the screen like some ghost crawling out of the past. I let it ring. She called again and again. 3 calls in under 5 minutes. Then came the texts. "We need to talk. It's important. Please, just hear me out." I didn't reply. Let her stew. That night, my phone lit up with voicemails. She must have left 10. I didn't listen to them, just deleted. A week later, she switched numbers. More calls, more texts. Same song, different ringtone. By week 2, she was calling from blocked numbers, like some scammer trying to sell me extended car warranties. I wasn't annoyed. I was entertained. The breakthrough came on a Thursday night. I'd just finished dinner when my phone rang again. A number I didn't recognize. Against my better judgment, I answered. "Hello?" There was a pause, then her voice. "It's me." I leaned back in my chair, smiling to myself. "Congratulations. You finally figured out how to use a phone. What do you want?" She didn't laugh. I know I don't deserve this, but I need to explain." "Explain what? How you called me dead weight while I was paying for your dream? Or how you celebrated passing the bar by serving me divorce papers at dinner? Which part needs clarification?" She tried again. "Look, I don't want to fight. I need your help." My car broke down. My credit cards are maxed. Rent's late. I'm. I cut her off. Wait. Let me get this straight. You dumped me because I was supposedly weighing you down. And now you're calling me to carry you again? Silence. Wow, I said, shaking my head even though she couldn't see me. This is like watching the sequel to a bad movie nobody asked for. Her voice cracked. I wouldn't ask if it wasn't serious. I don't have anyone else. That's not true, I shot back. You've got your fancy law degree, your shiny new job, your roommates who probably love covering your utilities. Remember? You didn't need me anymore. You had a future. I was wrong. I let the words hang there, then chuckled. No, you were honest. You said I was helpful but expendable. You said you didn't need me. That wasn't a mistake. That was you showing me exactly who you are. Now you're just mad that life isn't buying your sales pitch anymore. She started crying then. I could hear it in the way her words stumbled. I loved you. I still do. No, I said firmly. You loved what I provided. There's a difference. And right now, what you want is a bailout. I don't do bailouts. She snapped. So that's it? You're just going to leave me like this? Could you at least tell me where you are? I smirked. Pretty sure you left me first, remember? Don't rewrite history just because you don't like your ending. And no, you don't get to know where I am. I don't want anything associated with you. Before she could respond, I added, Look, I've got an early meeting tomorrow. Unlike you, I don't need someone else to pay my bills. Good luck with the whole independence thing. Then I hung up. The phone buzzed almost immediately. 3 missed calls, then a stream of texts. I didn't read them, just blocked the number. I eventually changed my number so she couldn't reach me. After I blocked her, she tried a new tactic, harassing my family. She called my parents, my sister, even my uncle, spinning sob stories about how she needed to reach me for something urgent. Thing is, I'd already prepped them years ago. I told them, if she comes sniffing around, you don't know me. And they handled it perfectly. My mom shut her down with a simple, he's doing fine. Don't call here again. My sister didn't even bother answering. My uncle, the sarcastic one, apparently told her, Lady, if he wanted you to find him, he wouldn't have vanished like Houdini. That one stung enough that she blew up at him on the phone. She thought she could corner me through the people closest to me, but all she really did was burn her last bridges. So when she finally showed up at my workplace, it wasn't just about me ignoring her. It was about everyone ignoring her. She was out of options, and she knew it. She thought she could crawl back when it got hard. What she learned was that the man she threw away wasn't waiting for her. He'd already moved on. And for the first time since signing those divorce papers, I realized the full beauty of silence. She could scream into the void all she wanted. I wasn't in it anymore. By then, my life didn't just feel stable. It was solid. I'd met someone new, a teacher I bumped into at a bookstore coffee shop. She was nothing like my ex. Independent, career-driven, paid her own way. First date? She insisted on splitting the bill. Next time we went out, she covered drinks without making it a power play. No freeloading, no expectations, just balance. Being with her felt easy. Around the same time, I closed on a small Bay Area house. Nothing mansion level, but it had a yard, a garage, and, best of all, my name on the deed alone. Dead weight doesn't buy property in San Francisco. Dead weight doesn't build a new life out of nothing. While I was settling into this new chapter, she was unraveling. Word reached me through mutual acquaintances. She was drowning at work. Debt crushing her. Hours insane. Roommates fed up with her attitude. She was living off gas station snacks and caffeine, pretending it was all part of the lawyer grind. That's when the hunt began. 1 year after the divorce, she finally managed to track me down. Later, I found out how a mutual who worked at her firm told me HR caught her running unauthorized searches on me in their audit logs. And on top of that, she even hired a private investigator. Pretty desperate moves for someone who didn't need me anymore. First came the flood of calls. Different numbers every day. I blocked one, she tried another. My phone looked like a telemarketer convention. Then came the texts, paragraphs about regret, second chances, and making things right. I didn't reply. Silence was still my weapon. When that didn't work, she showed up at my workplace. Walked right into the lobby, telling the receptionist she was my wife, and there was a family emergency. My boss called me, confused. I told him flat out, no wife. Escort her out. HR flagged her number. Strike one. She didn't quit. A week later, neighbors spotted a car parked outside my house for hours. A woman asking around if anyone knew me. Mrs. Vincent from across the street tipped me off, and I filed a police report for trespassing. Officers showed up, had a nice chat with her, and told her to leave. Strike two. Then she tried going digital. Posts on neighborhood Facebook groups, even Craigslist missed connections, painting some sob story about a lost husband she was trying to reconnect with. People roasted her in the comments. If he wanted to be found, he would. Lady, he's not missing, he's avoiding you. Brutal. But the real face-to-face came on a Saturday afternoon at Home Depot. I was loading lumber into my truck for a deck project when I heard her voice behind me. Please don't walk away. Just give me 5 minutes. I turned. She looked wrecked. Dark circles under her eyes. Thinner than I remembered. Hair tied back like she hadn't had time for anything beyond survival. She had that frantic energy of someone running on pure desperation. 5 minutes for what? I asked, slamming the tailgate shut. To apologize. To explain. To ask for another chance. I crossed my arms. You had 8 years of chances. You used them all up in a restaurant the night you served me papers. Her voice cracked. I was stressed. I didn't mean what I said. I've regretted it every day since. I smirked. Which part do you regret? Calling me dead weight? Or realizing that dead weight was actually keeping your whole life afloat? She flinched. I shouldn't have said that. I thought I needed to prove I could make it on my own. But I can't. It's harder than I imagined. The hours, the money, it's all too much. I gave up the best thing in my life. So let me get this straight, I said. When you thought you'd be rich and successful, you tossed me aside. Now that you're broke and tired, suddenly I'm the best thing you ever had. That about right? Her jaw tightened. She tried a new angle. We can rebuild. We had something good before law school consumed me. I almost laughed. Good? I had 8 years of being your personal ATM and emotional sponge. You had 8 years of free labor. Those aren't the same relationship. Her eyes filled. I love you. I always did. No, I said. You loved what I provided. You still do. There's a difference. She stepped closer, lowering her voice. What can I do to prove I've changed? Nothing. Because I've changed too. Her brow furrowed. What do you mean? I'm not the guy you discarded. That guy's gone. You're talking to someone who rebuilt his entire life from scratch. She blinked fast, like trying to process. So there's really no chance? I looked her dead in the eye. There's no chance because I don't recycle trash. I build new things, like my house, or my future, with someone who actually chose me when she had options. Her face went pale. You're with someone else? I'm engaged. She staggered back like I'd hit her with a brick. You don't get to walk back into my life just because yours didn't pan out, I said. You wanted a clean slate. Congratulations, you got it. But I'm not part of it. She opened her mouth, but I didn't give her the chance. I climbed into my truck, rolled the window down, and gave her one last line. Next time you find something valuable, try not to throw it away. Most people don't get a second chance at that mistake. Then I drove off, leaving her standing in that parking lot, tears streaking her face, staring at the man she thought she could discard. Meanwhile, word had already started spreading back at her firm about her little search missions. HR didn't like hearing about an associate harassing her ex-husband across state lines. It wasn't long before whispers turned into formal complaints. Her career, the one thing she thought she could rely on, was slipping just like everything else. And all I had to do was keep living my life. But she couldn't let that go. The silence. The fact that I never gave her an inch, it broke her. I thought blocking her, ignoring her, shutting her down at Home Depot would finally kill whatever fantasy she was clinging to. Instead, it pushed her over the edge. The meltdown started slow. Little whispers I heard through mutuals. A friend of a friend told me she'd been spotted crying in a courthouse bathroom during her lunch break. Another said she'd snapped at a senior partner in front of everyone because he made a harmless joke about rookie mistakes. People at her firm started tiptoeing around her, waiting for her to blow up again. Then it escalated. One Monday morning, she stormed into my office building pretending there was a medical emergency with me. Security buzzed me, and instead of hiding, I walked down to finish this once and for all. There she was in the lobby, pacing like a caged animal, hair messy, makeup streaked, voice trembling. The same woman who used to talk about being the youngest partner in the firm one day now looked like she hadn't slept in a week. Phones were out. People were watching. And when she spotted me, she latched on like I was her lifeline. Finally, she said, rushing toward me. You have to listen. I can't do this anymore. You can't just erase me. I didn't flinch. I already did. Her voice cracked, louder now. You don't understand. I lost everything. My roommates kicked me out. My car's gone. I can't keep up with my caseload. I held up my hand. Not my problem. She froze, then tried again, this time pleading. Please, we can fix this. I was wrong. I was stressed. I didn't mean it. I cut her off again, and pulled out two things from the folder I'd brought. One, restraining order paperwork. Two, my wedding invitation. Her face drained of color. What? What is this? She whispered. This, I said, shaking the first page, is a temporary restraining order. Signed by a judge yesterday. You keep pulling this stalker routine, you'll see me again, but it'll be across a courtroom. Then I lifted the second. And this is my wedding invitation. Figured I'd save you the trouble of finding out through gossip. Don't worry, you're not invited. That was the final straw. She erupted. Right there in the middle of the lobby, she went full meltdown. Screaming, crying, fists clenched, swearing at me, swearing at security, shouting that I owed her, that she made me who I was, that she could fix everything if I just gave her one more chance. People were recording, whispering, pointing. A professional lawyer reduced to a public circus. Security had to drag her out, and even then, she was clawing and kicking, begging them to let her back in. By the time they shoved her out the doors, her career was already over. She just didn't know it yet. Because my company filed a harassment report. Combined with the restraining order paperwork, it all got sent to her law firm. They called it a liability issue, which is lawyer speak for pack your desk. And once the firm cut her loose, the state bar got involved. A license isn't just about passing an exam. It's about good moral character. Public meltdowns, restraining orders, and harassment claims don't exactly scream fit to practice law. The bar suspended her license pending an investigation. The firm had handed over HR complaints and incident logs, and she was left on hold while they looked into it. Years of school, years of late night studying, tens of thousands of dollars in debt, all torched. Meanwhile, I was closing on my Bay Area house, planning a wedding with someone who didn't need me to pay their bills, and thriving in my career. But the final nail wasn't me. It was her own family. Her parents had always paraded her around like their golden child. Our daughter, the future lawyer. They loved bragging about her at family parties, throwing her achievements in everyone's faces. But when word got back to them about the restraining order and her license suspension, they cut her off cold. Embarrassment hit them harder than anything. I heard from a cousin that her dad actually said, "She's no daughter of mine if she's going to behave like this." They stopped answering her calls, unfollowed her on social media, and quietly told the extended family not to bring her up anymore. She wasn't their trophy anymore. She was a stain. So there she was. No career, no husband, no family backing, no friends who wanted to deal with her drama. Just debt, bitterness, and the memories of what she threw away. Me? I didn't need to lift another finger. She destroyed herself. Revenge doesn't always come with fireworks. Sometimes it's as simple as living better, succeeding quietly, and letting the other person implode while you're too busy building something real. It turned out I was the only thing keeping her afloat. Without me, she sank. And the best part? I never even had to get my hands dirty. That's the final cut. YouTube just dropped this new hype feature. If you're hooked on this story, smash that hype button. It tells YouTube this video deserves to blow up, and it keeps even crazier stories coming your way.